Welcome everyone to our live streaming, live interview series with Tom and Anita Herway, Country Director for LDS Charities in Italy. We are pleased to have you with us today, and we will talk about their work in Italy with, again, LDS Charities, which is the humanitarian arm of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As we often do, we will take your questions. Just leave comments on under the video, and we will pass them to our guests. So, Tom, Anita, thank you for being with us today.
A pleasure.
Could you please tell us about yourself, your experience, and your current occupation?
You start.
Okay. How far back do you want me to go? All the way?
You take 1 minute or two.
Okay. I grew up in an Air Force family, so we moved around quite a bit, but Washington, D.C. was always home. And I went to school there, and then I met Anita. I went out west to school and met Anita, and we had 6 children. I worked for the government, 12 years in Washington, D.C., and then came over on a 3-year assignment to NATO in Brussels and stayed 28. So we retired from here last year and decided we wanted to do this. We wanted to volunteer and help out. This was a topic that interested us. We'd had a lot of experience dealing with refugees and migration in Brussels, so we were very much interested.
And for me, I grew up in New Mexico, and then went to school at BYU, met Tom, and that's where we link up. The histories link up. I am not a professional person. We had 6 children. I stayed home. However, I did teach dancing to young children.
And so now you live in beautiful Rome, Italy,
yes,
representing LDS Charities with the NGO community and other volunteer organizations. So let's talk about your work. So the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have been quite open in its desire to help and support refugees, and it does so also through mainly through LDS Charities. So how is this goal to helping refugees coming along, and how is assistance to refugees provided in Italy, and how do you decide to where allocate the funds that you have?
Okay, well, when we came there, we were the first ones. We were the first humanitarian couple there. So we started networking, we started talking to people, and eventually found a community, a thriving community of charity organizations there helping the refugees. And our job then was to find good partners. That was our mandate. And we did. We found a number of groups that were helping at different levels, the large organizations, mid-sized organizations, and then the small grassroots organization. And our job really is to find these partners and decide if the projects that they are proposing are worth funding, and then secure the funding, and then make sure that what they do is what they said they were going to do, and that the money is well spent.
And speaking of funds, which is a question that comes often when we talk about the work of LDS Charities, where do the funds to run your programs come from?
Well, basically, the funds come from the members of our church. So it's all voluntarily donated from our church funds. And I just want to put in here that there's been a lot of disasters. And for a while, we were thinking the money needed to be diverted to greater needs than the refugee crisis in Italy. However, the members have been so generous that we still have plenty of funds allocated for refugee assistance.
So you say that the funds come from members of the church, so no government grants or any financial support?
No,
completely individual
private donations.
Okay. So next question is, someone who would like to help refugees but don't know how to do, or doesn't have the time to travel to refugee camps, but still would like to get involved. What can they do? What can individuals do to affect in a positive way the life of refugees?
I'm going to answer that one too, because what we have discovered is not what you might think, in a way, because volunteers are very much needed, but the really useful volunteers are ones that can donate on a regular basis. So if you find a camp or a shelter or something they're happy to have you come, say, like every Friday from 9 to 2 or something, because then you're worth training and they can count on you. So sometimes an hour here or an hour there may not be as helpful to them because they have to train you. But as we said, donations is what keeps us funded, and that's what helps us to fund others. So even though sometimes it seems cold to donate money, it really does help.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So there is plenty. So what you're saying is that there are plenty of opportunities for individuals to be engaged if they want to commit some of their time.
Of course, and to try to think of it more as a real contribution, not just a one-off thing.
Thank you. The refugee crisis has affected local communities as well as the broader international community. As volunteers for LDS Charities, what kind of impact you feel that you have made on local communities as you worked to assist refugees?
Well, this work is done locally and by local municipalities who receive funding from the government and from the EU. And so the work is all done in the community, and that's the way it should be, because it's a question of integrating refugees into Italian society. And doing it on a local level is really the only way that it can be done, trying to build a rapport between the refugees and the communities where they're living. And the organizations we deal with are experts in this process too. They are part of the community. They reach out to local businesses, local organizations, and they involve them in the refugee work. And on the other hand, they try to get the refugees to appreciate the community. So the groups we deal with, even the large groups, Red Cross and some of the others, if I'm allowed to mention names, I guess I'm allowed to mention names. Even Red Cross deals locally, like there's a Rome chapter of the Red Cross, and they know the community, they know the facilities, and they're excellent at integrating refugees into the community.
And I want to add that we've also come across a couple of groups. InterSauce, for example, has invited their local community into their compound to see how it works. Another group called Castle Scalabrini 634 also has activities with the local community, and they allow their refugees to give back to the community. So the community is not a hands-off; they're very much integrated.
One thing, if I can mention this too, what we've heard and what we've seen is they try to distribute the refugees. They all come into central points, and then they're set out on a planned basis. And the goal is to have a 3 refugee for every 1,000 people in the population ratio. So certain neighborhoods don't get overrun. They're dispersed, and it makes it easier for them to integrate. It's not only the refugees trying to integrate into Italian society, it's the Italian population trying to absorb these people and integrate them as well. So I think it's a well thought out process, working very effectively.
Thank you. And so you mentioned a few organizations, you mentioned a few projects, and how do you work with these groups? How do you pick these groups? How do you select these groups? And how have you seen that your collaboration with them has enhanced your work and the assistance to the people that you're helping?
Well, we don't work directly with the refugees. We help the groups that are helping them, because they're the groups that really know what's going on and can make the long-term commitment. So we've been involved with these groups, trying to help them and support them.
And you were saying, how do we pick them? Many times we just sit down with their leaders and directors and talk with them and just get a feel for how they're doing. Many times they'll let us tour their facilities, or we meet their personnel.
Word of mouth too. I mean, we go and we see and we observe, and there's a feeling you get. You get good at this after a while. After 9 months, we're experts, right? But you get a feel for what's going on. You see the rapport between the workers and the refugees, and you understand where there's a connection. And that's a big part of it, but also word of mouth. We'll go around and we'll talk to organizations, say, what do you think about so-and-so? And sometimes they say, they're good boys, they're doing a good job. And so there's ways, you learn ways to find out what's really going on.
And I find that, let me reemphasize what he just said, really getting good vibes from one worker saying, oh, we really like that organization. Oh yeah, we know them, they do good work. Mm-hmm. It's a huge recommendation for us.
And they partner. This is the other thing that's been fascinating to us. They have this network of partners, and so you know, when you're in with a good one, they have good partners, and they're all good. They all respect each other and work well with each other. So it's a very sophisticated, well-developed network of charity organizations.
But it's nice. It seems very interesting, the fact that you go around and meet all of these organizations and you get also a clear picture of what's happening on these issues. So for those who have just joined in the meantime, today for our live interview series we have Tom and Anita Herway, who are the country directors in Italy for LDS Charities, and we are talking about their work and the work with partners organizations. And if you have any questions for them, feel free to leave a comment under the video, and I will relate those to Tom and Anita. So, continuing with the questions here, you mentioned two organizations a few moments ago, Intersos and Medu, and I've seen from the news coming out from the church in Italy that the church has worked with them to fund medical equipment for disembarking refugees and to operate a refugee center with an implemented outreach program for minors. So what can you tell us about the success of these programs, and what have you done to help refugees, and particular youth, to integrate into their new communities?
So if you really want to focus particularly on the youth, the most recent one is with Intersos, and our church also has a program called Institute that they have young adults come together for lessons and discussions and things. They have collaborated with Intersos to have opportunities for the young adults in Institute to prepare a meal and become acquainted with the youth of Intersos. So that collaboration is brand new, and it's hopefully we'll get a good start in that one.
Yeah, the most vulnerable segments of the refugee population are women and minors, and these organizations know that, and that's where they focus. And both of the two organizations you mentioned are extremely good at that. And a lot of it is they need a friend. Of course, they need the basics of life: food, shelter, and clothing. But a lot of them are lonely. They're away from their families. They haven't been treated well. And a lot of these groups will provide that type of environment where they can get to meet people and know people. And one of the things, a previous question you had, is how can people help? What we've started is like a Facebook pal. They don't know anybody. They need someone to talk to, and that's
a local person. Of course, they're talking to the people from home, and they want to make new friends here.
Yeah, and so people from back in the U.S. say, what can I do? Well, this is one thing they can do, long distance, is connect with someone, let them email them, let them tell them what's going on, what life is like for them. And it's amazing how successful that's been.
That's wonderful. I do have, there is a question from Rebecca, who's asking on this topic, what's the biggest challenge with integrating refugees into their new communities?
That is an issue. As I mentioned before, the government tries to disperse them so they're not overrun. But the fact is 600,000 refugees from Africa have come into Italy in the last 4 years. So it's a wave that's come in and hit them. And they try to the best of their ability, as I say, spread them out, find them places to live, integrate them into the community. One group we deal with, Chiesa Valdese, up in Torino, involves the community in the sense that they don't just provide services for refugees, they do it for the whole community.
So that just automatically makes them interface with each other.
Yeah, and so it's not just for refugees, because one of the things we found traveling around is if you have a large congregation of refugees, sometimes the local community resists it. In fact, we've run across that in a couple of locations where the local community pushes them out. So they try to integrate them into, and they know how to do it. They're very good at it.
And let's talk about a little bit about integration and the work that the church and LDS Charities have been doing. So since 2013, the church has implemented several initiatives in many European countries with objectives like distributing hygiene packs for the homeless, assisting hospitals, and providing educational classes to teach language, computer, and job skills, to name a few. And I think this goes into the integration part. So some of these projects have clear short-term benefit, like the hygiene kits and things like that. But what sort of long-term benefits you would like to provide for these vulnerable communities?
So I'll start. There's a new project in Milan with ADSI, and they are specifically, the project is specifically to take a refugee who has the qualifications, the motivation, they've been screened, and then they team them up with another person, and that they take courses, they get certifications, they do all the things that are necessary for job placement. And by the end of a year, they're not guaranteed a job, but they're highly employable. And they stick with them until they are launched, basically. So it's truly integration.
Integration is the big challenge. That's the tough job. You know, what we've experienced here the last few years in Italy has been trying just to accommodate this massive humanity coming in. Now, how to integrate them well into society is the real challenge for all of us right now. And that job has to be done well, or there's going to be negative consequences.
And we do feel like the Italian government has done an amazing job on the forefront as far as welcoming them, documenting them, getting them a place to live, and making sure that their first immediate needs are taken care of. It's amazing what they've done. And we feel like now that they see the shift, that they also will shift their funds funnel it into the next phase, which is integration.
Job training, job placement, integration into society.
Thank you. You talk about many stories and experiences that you had with organizations. You also mentioned that you don't work necessarily close to the beneficiaries of your work. Mm-hmm. However, you may have come across some individuals or persons who have left an impression on you. Can you share something about it? Is there an interesting story that you may want to share with us?
I'll share one. We met a boy just off the boat, had an opportunity to have a discussion with him and exchanged contact information.
In Lampedusa.
In Lampedusa, yeah. And then he luckily was stationed in Rome. So we had a chance on a personal basis to become better acquainted with him and spend time with him. He has since been transferred to another place, but in the meantime, he's making progress. So just to see where he came from, fresh off the boat, and still see that he's hopeful and making progress still 6 months down the road is very encouraging. And to see that the programs are working for him.
That's really the rewarding part of the job, I think, is seeing individuals affected positively by all that we're doing. And as Anita said, seeing them come off the boat so full of hope, going into this system that does a good job. The Italian government does a good job providing them with their basic needs, but what they really need are friends and to integrate. And there have only been a few instances where we've been able to follow them through, but where we have, it's been very rewarding. And what they all want, they come here to work. You know, there's this impression that refugees are just trying to find a handout, and they think it might be bigger and better in Europe. But we haven't found that to be the case at all. They come here to work, so they need a job, and we're trying to help. I mean, these companies that we're dealing with now, they're dealing in the gaps. The government provides them with the basic needs of life, but things like jobs and integration into society, that's an area where the government really hasn't moved yet. As Anita said, we think they will move there. But that's where so many of these groups are now, trying to help them find work so they can have self-confidence, self-respect, be accepted by the community as tax-paying citizens, integrate into society. And then the whole attitude, I think, will change. People will recognize that we need immigration and that this is happening and we need to embrace it.
So there is a lot of human component in the work that you do, which is
yes.
That's
the rewarding part, the most rewarding.
There is a lot of speaking of, you just mentioned there's a lot of fear or mistrust surrounding refugees. We read it on the newspaper. We read it on the social media, and we hear it in casual conversations on the street. Have you ever experienced? Have you ever faced these challenges in your work, and how would you address these challenges? What would you counsel to someone to address these challenges?
I personally would say, once you get to know them, your outlook will completely change. So if you can become involved, it changes you. It'll change them. That your view changes, and it can only be changed one person at a time. You can't just market it. It has to be changed one person at a time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that so many have come at the same time, because you tend to treat them
as a group,
kind of like a teacher with a classroom of children. They're just trying to maintain the chaos. But once you can get down and get to know them, you understand, you connect with them. I mean, we had an incident where we took two boys to lunch, and they said it was the first time they'd ever eaten with white people, and it was just they were, just to watch them as they made this adjustment into society was a rewarding experience.
We started to receive some further questions, and I take the opportunity to invite the viewers to send them in again for the last few minutes that we are together. So maybe this goes back into probably the beginning of the discussion. So Paula is asking, you mentioned that you're well recognized by partner organizations and their network. Does the general community also know about the support that LDS Charities provides to these recognized partners?
Well, that's a good question, because I mean, the nature of the work we do is it's not well known. I mean, it's charity work, which you don't come in and say, we're doing wonderful things, look at me. You do it behind the scenes, and so it's not well known. Having said that, I think we've gained a lot of respect from the groups that we deal with. They understand that we understand them and their mission, and we're devoted to it as they are.
And they try. I think the companies try, to put LDS Charities in their websites, we're as donors, and they'll put our logo, like Red Cross put our logo on the mobile homes that we bought. So I think they are proud to be partners with us, and of course we're extremely honored to be partners with them. But it's a one-to-one relationship.
We hope too that the refugees are aware of what we're doing. They see us actively involved. But the nature of the work we do is to allow these organizations to do more. Most of them are privately funded, and they're constrained. And we see the potential for these organizations, and it's just great to be a part of this whole effort that's trying to allow these people to do their full job and do it well. And I think that's recognized.
Thank you. Emily asks, what is the best way to integrate refugees without giving the impression that you're pressuring them to change or abandon their culture to better assimilate to their host country? Have you had any experience with that?
Wow, that is a good one.
It's a really good question.
That's a good question. It's culture shock. There's no doubt about when they come from sub-Saharan Africa into Western Europe, there's a culture shock. Naturally they're going to abandon some of the things that they knew before. They've left family, they've left country, and I think they recognize this when they come. But they're still proud of their heritage. They still recognize that there are good things about where they came from as well, and hopefully they'll preserve those. I mean, we've had this same problem in the United States, trying to, as immigrants come in, absorbing a new culture at the same time maintaining the good things about where they came from and who they are.
There is a question about, which probably connects with Emily's question. You've seen, in your work, you have seen a lot of NGOs. You have studied a lot of NGOs and learned about a few of them. And so Nick asks, obviously all charities have good intentions, but what separates a good NGO from a bad NGO?
Good question.
Yeah, these are super questions. I personally say that it has helped because we get to interview them one-on-one. We get to tour their campuses and tour what they do. And then we go back and follow up. So I don't think just reading online, if you can say, oh, this one's probably good and this one's probably bad. I mean, that's almost impossible. Take word of mouth maybe and ask others if they've worked with them. But I think it can't replace being one-on-one and seeing it for yourself.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. The thing that's been really rewarding is being able to go and see this work and talk to these people. There was one place we went to in Ventimiglia where we paid the rent for a facility. And they said they were going to do all these things, and we weren't sure, because a lot of these groups we deal with are all volunteers. They're not professionals. They're people who have jobs and families and then do this in their spare time. So we walked into this facility, and it was just jammed full of refugees. You couldn't even get through the door. If we hadn't gone and seen that, we would have had no idea.
Or believed it. It was amazing to see with your own eyes. If someone had said, we said, oh, anyone could make up those numbers. But it was jam-packed.
And when we went inside, the volunteers from all over, from the community, from different organizations, were interacting with the refugees, helping them. I mean, that was just a magnificent project. And if we hadn't been able to go ourselves and see that, we would have had no idea.
That sounds just like that. Well, we have time for one last question, and that's from Hannah, who asks, how would you respond to someone who is worried about terrorism in a community where refugees are becoming more common?
Have you got an hour?
No, we got 60 seconds.
The fact is it okay if I? Yeah. The fact is the refugee community is vulnerable to exploitation. That's why I say it's so critical that we do our job well and that we help them integrate into society, because otherwise they're going to get frustrated and they become vulnerable to exploitation. And those people are out there and they are professionals at what they do. And we're combating that. That's exactly why we're there, to try to fight that from happening. The people come over with, as I say, they want to work, they want to contribute, they want to be part of society. But if they get frustrated, if they get turned down, they become very vulnerable to exploitation.
Or ostracized.
By groups that will lead them to crime and other things.
So we go back to the importance of integration programs and initiatives that you're working with.
Giving them self-respect and meaningful work and feeling a part of a community and belonging and being accepted. That's the challenge.
Thank you. Well, this has been very interesting. Is there anything else that you would like to say, in particular, where can our viewers or the general public find out more about LDS Charities and the work that you do? But finally, of course, I would like to know, one last couple of words from you as a personal impression of
You
what
can
you
do
do.
our final impressions, but if you want to know what work LDS Charities does, it's just the website ldscharities.org, and it lists all the things that are going on, and there has all the information there.
Thank you.
Well, when we first came to Italy, I think I mentioned this, we had no idea what we were doing. We just started talking to people, and as we got into this, we realized what an amazing world this is. Not only this whole movement, this whole migration movement, which is worldwide. It's not just Italy. It's intense in Italy, but it's happening worldwide. And becoming part of that and seeing people reach out just from the goodness of their hearts, giving their time and their money and their efforts to helping. It's just been fantastic to be a part of that. And I think it's brought us closer together. We had no idea. You read about migration, you read about refugees. You have no idea until you get in the middle of it, the goodness that's going on out there. And it's got huge implications, like I said, for the future. This is the future. If it's done well, it's going to be great. It'll be a good thing, just what we need.
Thank you. Well, okay. Anita, Tom, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for watching and for being with us today, and for your questions and your participation. The video will be available on our Facebook page, and so you can continue to interact with us in that way. So thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again to the next live interview series episode. Have a good day.